Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome. It's nice to see everybody signing up, everyone logging on. That's great. What we'll do is we'll give a few minutes for everyone to click the link and open Zoom. Maybe as you sign up, maybe say hi. Perhaps let us know your name, the company that you're from, and where you're based in South Africa. It would be, or wherever in the world. It would be lovely to hear from you in the webinar chat. I think when using the webinar chat, please just remember to message the host and panelists. The Zoom can be a little bit confusing on the chat. Yeah, that's great. I see people logging on. That's excellent, excellent, wonderful. So nice to have everyone here. Okay, let me get going. Little brief introduction. I'm Benjamin Buckingham. I'm the managing director of Lumenii, and I'd like to welcome you to this sales excellence webinar. I think one of the things I want to mention, what we like to do in our webinars is we like to give out 1 or 2 prizes. So we're going to be giving out 3 prizes today. We're going to be giving out a prize for the most insightful comment. So some great comments, please. A prize for the best question, as well as a prize for the best feedback at the end of the webinar. This webinar is being recorded. We will share the recording and the notes with you afterwards. So that will all come to you. I'm just going to give, I see the attendees are still rising. I'm just going to wait another minute, and then I'm going to introduce you to our panelists. Okay, great. Okay, excellent. So first, what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce you to Samara Basson. Samara is the head of people and innovation at Intelligent Debt Management, and she's been there since 2013. Samara's got an honors in consumer science and an MBA in organizational development and innovation. Samara's got a passion for people, technology, and education. So, Samara, thank you so much for joining us. We're very, very interested to hear what you've got to say. And in our panel discussion, thank you so much for being here. I would also like to introduce you to Jason Bagley. Jason is a sales and marketing entrepreneur. Jason built and sold a lead generation company called Firing Squad to a US company in 2020. And Jason has more recently found a business called Growth Experts, and they're a team of fractional marketing directors that help businesses plan and execute on their marketing and sales strategy. And then last and certainly not least is my business partner and co-director at Lumenii, Jaintheran Naidoo, responsible for delivery at Lumenii. It's been a pleasure working with Jaintheran since 2016. And Jaintheran is a seasoned psychologist with experience ranging from the military to parastatals to large corporates, as well as agencies and startups. Jaintheran, we're really looking forward to what you've got to say in the presentation, as well as in the panel. Thank you for all the work in this webinar. All right, let me just give you a bit of a run through the agenda. So this is my little introduction, which we're doing now. Then Jaintheran is going to take us through a presentation on how to measure, benchmark, and develop high-performing sales teams for about 15-20 minutes. And after that, we're going to have the panel discussion. In the panel discussion, what we're going to do is we're going to address audience questions that were posed before the webinar, as well as questions that you pop up in the chat. So please do ask those questions as we go. It's not going to be possible to address all questions. So, if we can't get to a question, if the panelists can't get to a question during the webinar, we're definitely going to respond to all questions afterwards. So you will get a response. And then at the very end, we're going to wrap up and close. So I think on that note, Jaintheran, I'm going to hand to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. Always lovely to be on a webinar with you. Before I dive into the presentation, maybe just a few words about our organization. So as you know by now, our organization is called Lumenii. And what we do at the very heart of it is that we provide organizations with access to assessment platforms on which they can run unlimited assessments and not just for selection, but also for development, career and succession management, team interventions, and so on. So we consist of a team of HR professionals, industrial organizational psychologists, and consultants. And on the screen, you can see an indication of some of our clients. And as you can see, we don't just work with sales-oriented organizations, but organizations from various industries and sectors as well. And so let me jump into it. And our topic today is about sales talent excellence. And you're probably asking the question, why did we select this topic? And one of the reasons is that sales talent is at the forefront of business leaders' minds and probably consuming a lot of talent practitioners' time and attention as well. So when we think about sales hiring, sales retention, etc., we find that there are lots of maybe I can even call them myths, misconceptions, and beliefs out there about this area of talent management. So things like, there will always be a high churn in terms of my sales staff. I recruit often. I recruit only at the entry level. Salespeople are difficult to engage, and a few other beliefs and maybe misconceptions around sales management. So we're going to try and touch on most of these. We're probably not going to get through to all of them, but we probably will address some of them in the questions as well. So if we start at the beginning, it's all about finding the right sales talent. But in terms of sales talent management, it's not too different from any other type of talent management in that it does need to be a holistic approach. We need to consider all of the facets of the talent management lifecycle when we're thinking about sales talent. So we might start off with looking for the right talent, but we also need to think about how do we develop, engage, and retain that sales talent in the organization and for the benefit of the organization. So we're talking mostly about things like hiring and onboarding effectively, about managing their performance, coaching for performance excellence, developing them into the role, and then making sure that those individuals are properly engaged, that they feel like they belong to the organization, and that there's also a logical succession in the organization in terms of not just sales talent, but sales leadership as well. So we will try and touch upon all of these aspects. We've got some very interesting questions from you. Thank you very much for that. So we will try and make sure that we touch upon those things that are top of mind for you. Let's start off with, something that's probably taking up a lot of your time and a lot of your effort, and that is in terms of identifying the right sort of talent for your particular sales needs. And most of us will be engaging in interviews. Interviews are very popular for very good reason. It gives us a very good opportunity to get in front of the candidate, to actually get a sense of how well we connect with this candidate, how well this candidate will fit into the team, the organization, etc. But the problem with this is that if we are getting highly effective salespeople in front of us, those salespeople are going to be really good at selling themselves. So we need to ask the question, what are they not telling you? So this is a very natural response. We all want to look our best, but probably sales individuals are probably more skilled at doing this. So how do we get the real picture? And how do we sort out, the true gems from those individuals that are just good at selling themselves? So in psychometric speak, we talk about something called social desirability. And social desirability is this propensity to try and come across looking better than one actually is. Fortunately, when we make use of objective measurements, we can actually measure for social desirability and then in a way control social desirability, so we get a good indication of who that individual actually is. And we will talk about this a little bit later on. Before we actually go into a bit more detail and sharing some of our thoughts with you, we'd like to pose a question to you. And you all probably have substantial experience in hiring, managing, and retaining sales talent. So we'd like to hear from you. What do you think are actually the most important criteria to consider when trying to predict sales performance? So what do you look for in your sales talent? So on the screen now, you are seeing the poll with a number of options. It is multiple choice. So please indicate to us, which ones you think are most important to consider when hiring sales talent. Is it personality? Is it intelligence? Is it what the person finds important in the workplace, motivation and drivers? Is it about their level of agility and adaptability? Is it about their experience, their proven track record? Or do you look for specific industry experience? Do you consider how well they do in the interview? Do you look at their qualifications or their years of experience? Okay, so we're going to give you a bit of time to consider all of those options, and then we'll also talk about the results as soon as all of them are through. Okay, so we're going to close the survey and let's have a look at those results. Okay, so wow, I am impressed. So most of you, 65% of you, feel that adaptability and agility is one of the most important things. Well, in this survey, the most important thing. And coming through a close second are motivations and drivers, then personality, and then a proven track record. So very interestingly, proven track record coming in fourth after agility, personality, motivations, and drivers. So thank you very much for your participation there. We will be sharing the results of that survey with you as well. So let's jump into it. Let's look at what we have found, not just from our own internal experience in terms of hiring sales talent, but also from our experience in dealing with our clients who engage in sales recruitment as well, but from the research as well. What are the factors to consider when we are trying to predict sales success? Now, what we find is that there does need to be some sort of innate sales talent to start off with. So some sort of foundation for being able to sell. We need to ask the question, can this person sell in the first place? And that's what you see in the bottom right-hand side of that circle. Now, then we also find it's important to refine this a little bit more, make it a bit more focused. And we need to think about what is the fit for my particular role in my organization. So we need to ask questions about the particular role fit and then also the culture fit. So to what extent does this person buy into the values of the organization, is comfortable selling what the organization has to offer, and how well they fit into the team? And then finally, we also need to think about engagement, because it's not one-sided. We need to think about, is the individual actually getting what they want out of the work environment? And are they finding fulfillment in this role, and will therefore likely stay a lot longer in the role? So as you can see, it's multidimensional, lots of questions to be asked, lots of factors to consider. But fortunately, we can actually quantify all of these things, and we can measure all of these things objectively. And here I'm talking specifically from a psychological functioning point of view. So in terms of measuring these things psychologically, we know that we can measure broadly two categories of functioning. The one is about what you can do, your intelligence, and the other is about things that are well suited to you, that are aligned to your personality. Those are all of the trait-based type of considerations that we can keep in mind. So I'm going to share with you some typical profiles and benchmarks that we have found to be quite common amongst organizations that we have worked with. These are just 4 examples of sales role benchmarks, or you can call them archetypes. You've probably come across some other archetypes, and you might even be able to identify with some of these archetypes. Please let us know if you've come across other archetypes, and also let us know if you can identify with any one of these archetypes. So we know that we can describe the requirement of a sales role in an organization by making use of particular benchmarks, because a sales role is not a sales role, is a sales role. It differs from organization to organization. The common ones, for example, the hunter, that's the very first archetype or benchmark I ever heard of. We know that the hunters are characterized by being proactive and relentless in their pursuit for sales. They seek out new opportunities. They excel at cold calling, and they specialize in new potential clients. So the hunters are typically very, very task-oriented, very goal-oriented. As a contrasting example, let's look at the consultant. The consultant benchmark is all about understanding the client's needs thoroughly, providing a tailored solution that is well thought through, often with the client as well. And it's about the relationship, and it's driven by the relationship and also by a deep product knowledge. So just to illustrate to you the differences between the benchmarks, and like I said, really depends on the organization and your role requirements, we can come up with a benchmark for almost any organization and any role. How do we quantify all of these things? We quantify it by being able to measure various elements from the individual. So on this slide, a lot of information, which I will take you through. So the information on this slide is based on the results of 3 different types of assessments. So we measured someone's personality, we measured their drives and their role preferences, and finally, we also measured learning agility, and we are able to identify what is the typical profile of a hunter in this example. So in the survey, you indicated that agility was the most important, followed by personality. So how do we translate personality into role requirements? We translate it by thinking about what are the competencies necessary in that role. And competencies being that set of knowledge, skills, and attributes that are required for the role. And based on the person's personality, we can comment on their potential for various competencies. The figure right at the top on the left-hand side, that is their general innate sales potential. For all sales roles, we want a high innate sales potential. And that is the case in this example. We also identify 11 out of the 45 competencies in our library as being critical for different sales roles, but not all 11 are important for all sales roles. In this example, we've identified commercial drive, persuasiveness, results-oriented, social skills, and vitality as most important for the hunter role. And this example, the person has high potential for all of those, meaning that the individual will find it very easily to develop skills in these areas if they don't already have skills, and there will be little effort in performing in these areas, so therefore performance will be sustainable. That's about what they can do. We also need to ask questions about what do you actually want to do in the work environment? And that's where your motivators and role preferences become important. So we can measure a range of motivators like need for success, need for status, need for respect, etc. And based on those, we identify what role the individual is most comfortable with and will gravitate towards in the work environment. We identify 8 different roles. And for the hunter sales role, we find that the booster role preference and the achiever role preference are probably the most relevant, meaning that people that are comfortable being the ones that focus on the goal, drive for achievement of goals in a precise and accurate manner in the team are the ones that are successful in a hunter role. And then finally, in terms of agility, we measure agility quite comprehensively. So we know that the higher the agility, the higher the correlation with performance. But we need to look at the detail. There are 5 dimensions we measure. We can't expect someone to be high in all 5, but the specific dimension that is most relevant for the hunter role is results agility. High results agility means that the individual learns by persevering, learns from their successes and failures, and learns by actually trying and trying again. So in the face of adversity, in the face of the unknown, they persevere and they learn from their successes and their failures. As a contrast, I'll quickly show you just one other benchmark. This is the challenger role that we didn't talk about in much detail, but you can see we can benchmark that as well. We did talk about the consultant role a little bit. So just to contrast with the hunter role, you'll see that we start off with high general sales potential, but the competencies that we look for in a consultant are slightly different. So we look for analyzing and forming opinions, the potential for client focus, for listening, and for negotiating. What sort of role does the consultant feel comfortable in? They feel comfortable being the caregiver and the motivator. So focusing on the individual rather than the task like the hunter does, and making sure that people are taken care of, they feel like they're being listened to, and motivating them, getting them to do things in new and different ways. The agility that's most important in this case is people agility. So high people agility means that these individuals are comfortable collaborating, inviting input, listening to others, and performing and learning by actually collaborating with other individuals. So we can benchmark just about any role in this manner as well. So we've talked about hiring the best talent. So what next? What do you do when you find the best talent? How do you make sure they are performing? How do you make sure they are engaged? And how do you retain them? Okay, so there's no simple answer. Once again, it is multidimensional. And What I find really interesting is that engagement and retention is built into all aspects of sales talent management. It's not just when the person is in the organization. It starts off by finding the right fit for the role and for the organization. When you have right role fit, it means that there's less effort being expended, so therefore the person is more likely to stay and feel engaged. When we have a fit in terms of the internal drivers, so I'm looking at the top part of the diagram. So when the person is getting what they want from the particular role and they are enjoying their role and they're also getting opportunity to express their agility, that's when you're going to build engagement. Okay? But we need to place the right person in the right context. So culture fit becomes really important. What is your leadership looking like? What is your management style looking like? Is it appropriate for what you want to get out of the salesperson? Okay. So I've so far been bombarding you with lots of information. If you have any questions, any comments, please feel free to pop that into the chat and Benjamin will bring that to our attention. Okay. You'll see we've also listed agility as important in terms of the culture fit, because we don't want to identify a highly agile individual, but place them in an organization that is not fostering agility and is not agile itself. So when we think about agility, we are actually creating the right conditions for high performance and for introspection and building performance. Okay. So if the potential is in place, when the person feels engaged in the role and when the environment is correct for that person, then we can expect that the potential is going to develop and be expressed in terms of the sales performance that we want to see. And performance can be measured in terms of the person meeting targets, building a nice pipeline, building relationships with clients, and also demonstrating adaptive behaviors, not just relying on their existing skills and experience, but being able to cope with the new and the unexpected as well. Okay. So I hope by now I have illustrated that managing sales talent is quite multifaceted. It is holistic in its approach, and you need to consider quite a number of different factors. So we identify the right talent, but we need to make sure that we tailor the training for that particular profile, that benchmark, that archetype, so we get the best out of that person. We need to make sure that we pay attention to and we invest in effective onboarding. So this helps to decrease role ambiguity, increases engagement, and ultimately retention. We also need to acknowledge that coaching and mentoring is a vital part of building performance and building engagement. So your leaders, your managers, your supervisors need to play a role here, whether they think about it consciously or not. There's opportunities for on-the-spot learning, building the relationship with the individual, with the team, and with the organization. Retention strategies, like I mentioned, we don't just suddenly one day wake up and decide, actually, we need to decide how to retain our talent, but that needs to be built in from the beginning. We need to ask questions about what people want, and we need to make sure that that's aligned with what the job offers, with the culture of our organization as well. Okay. We also then need to think about how do we mitigate risks for the organization? How do we make sure we have a pipeline in place so that we are not open to risk if our top performers leave, if our top leaders leave? So I'm referring to succession planning. But this, again, is not a one-way road. It needs to also take into consideration the individual's requirements. So there needs to be regular career conversations and properly laid out career paths for the individual, driven by the individual. And ideally, these need to also align with the organization's succession plans as well. And then finally, the organization, the leaders need to continuously build a culture of agility. Building a culture of agility means that we allow opportunities for experimentation. We allow a safe space for individuals to take control of things, to make decisions by themselves, for reflection and for learning. When we build a culture of agility, we're actually building a nice positive feedback loop. So the greater the agility, the greater the performance, and the greater the agility, etc. Okay, so quite a complex process, but it's something that we need to pick a point and we need to start with it so that we're actually building an environment that is not just attracting, but growing and also developing sales talent and leadership as well. Okay, so Benjamin, back to you. Thank you very much. That was my story about sales talent.
Thank you, Jaintheran. That was very, very interesting. Thanks so much for those insights. It's interesting to see, looking at your agility profile on the screen, that you line up with a hunter, at least from the agility perspective. Yeah, so I think we're going to now move on to the panel discussion. So, as we're chatting, if any questions have come to mind, please either pop them up in the chat, in the Zoom chat, or in the Q&A section. Either's fine. We'll pick them up. If the panelists can come online, thank you very much. Okay, so I think what I'd like to do is maybe start with a small opportunity for an introduction. So this would be to the three of you. Maybe we'll say Samara, then Jason, and then Jaintheran, if you can add on. If you could maybe just take 2 minutes to introduce yourselves and reflect on how sales creates value in your organization.
Thanks, Benjamin. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Samara Basson. I am with the IDM Group. My current portfolio includes a few things, including managing the people department. We're about 800 employees across several brands. And we focus predominantly on helping people in the financial services industry. And if I think about how sales creates value, I mean, the most obvious is that sales guys bring in the money. That keeps the wheels of the organization turning. But I think more importantly than that is that they're often the first human interaction with our organization, with our customer-facing brands. And they have the ability to create trust, to create a sense of competency and build the first impression, which is absolutely critical, because if you get that wrong, you lose the opportunity to actually engage with a customer. And then I think another thing that's really critical for us is that they hold the most invaluable insights about our customers, about what our customers want, about what they need, about how they're responding to our organization. And if you can harness that insight, it's absolute pure gold. So yeah.
I'll go. It's my turn, I think. Ben did an amazing job of introing me earlier on, and I sent that to him, so I don't think I need to rehash that. But yes, I'm fond of growth experts, and we sort of help businesses with their marketing and sales. Let's keep it short and sweet. But from a sales perspective, I think, like Samara said, the easy answer is they bring in revenue for your business. But I think the bigger part, especially for our side, is it actually, sales is not always about, it's about timing, right? And so our sales, going out and doing sales, it often allows us to expand our network. So we're trying to grow out and trying to find new markets or new avenues to go in, but it's not a right time or not a right fit at that time. And so that's helped us grow our brand, helps us grow awareness of our product. But more importantly, I think even now, while I'm trying to our business is in a very much in a growth phase, it's improving our product offering and our product market fit. So every client that we're sort of taking on, we're learning from. And from a sales perspective, it's like their needs are slightly different. So is that a good fit for us, or should we be taking it on and then also helping in, making our product and service better? And then just improving sort of the feasibility of our business. So do we actually have product market fit? And so those are all the things that our sales, I'm obviously doing a lot of the sales at the moment. I've got one person helping at the moment. Like, those are the things that we're seeing as we're sort of in a big growth phase at the moment.
Great, I'll go next. So Benjamin's introduced me already, but I'll just to elaborate, I also have a bit of a business development role in the organization as well. So I do dabble in a bit of sales as well, as my profile gave away. And my answer is actually quite similar to Jason's answer. I think in the first place, the impact that sales has on our organization, besides just being the lifeblood of the organization, it brings a particular energy into the organization. It's sort of the heartbeat of the organization. It keeps us all on our toes. But I think very interestingly, like Jason mentioned, that consultative approach that we take with our clients, we actually learn so much from the clients. It keeps us on the forefront of our industry, of the HR, IO psychology industry, and it basically makes life interesting for us by challenging us and coming up with solutions specifically for clients.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. Very, very interesting perspectives. Some elements in common and some specific to the organization. So the next question I'd like to ask was one that was submitted during the signups, and I'm going to ask this to Samara and Jason. So what, in your experience, are the best sources of sales talent? Can you reflect on bringing in junior sales talent versus experienced hires? Samara, do you want to take the first response?
Yeah, I'll take a first stab at it. Thanks. So I think for us, it's very unique. We only hire graduates. We don't take people with experience from other industries, and that was a very deliberate strategy that we put into place when the organization was started about 20 years ago. So for us, they're all junior, they're green, they know nothing. And so their development and their career transitions through the organization are absolutely critical. So we really have to support them with extensive development, the onboarding, there's generic onboarding for over a week, then they go into specific systems training, and we often put them into an incubator where they're monitored through a specific team leader who can kind of provide the right support to them. We pair them up with coaches. There's a lot of mentoring and coaching that goes on across the teams to help to kind of get those skills up. And then as they become more proficient at their sort of starter position jobs, we move them through the organization. It's the best way of them actually increasing their earnings. They have to perform well. And as they move into higher sort of commission earning or incentive earning positions, they increase their take-home pay. So this movement and development is, it's critical to them. They have to improve their skill sets. And when they eventually land in sort of our core sales environment, they actually have to go through a number of development opportunities before they get there, which I think for us gives us an incredible ability to really observe the inherent talent. How are they performing? How are they adapting to the changes? We're a very high change environment. And so we can sort of, the good leaders will be able to observe and to pick these guys out. And then before they get into our core sales environment, we put them through another incubator. So they have to apply. We look at a skills test. We do a brief interview, but it's less about the interview and it's more about how do they demonstrate their sales ability. We put them into an incubator, and again, they get all of the mentorship and the training. They sit there for about 3 months. We pair that with industry training. They have to be accredited. That takes about a month to get them there. And then they have to go through a final interview, meet the criteria, and they'll finally be moved into our sales environment. So we really have a spotlight on them for quite a while and make sure that they are really going to be successful before we put them into our core sales team.
On my side, I think to answer the first part of the question, like where to find sales talent. So for me, the best place we found sales talent is honestly word of mouth. So just putting it out there and my own network of businesses and clients and that type of thing, and just asking around like who's looking. That's what's been a start for us. The spray and pray approach, when I say that, I mean like job postings on various sites. The quality, I think we've all seen that, the quality of responses, it's like it feels like you're sorting like a needle in a haystack when it comes to that. So not often works for us from that perspective. But the best outside of the word of mouth is actually reaching out to existing sales talent that is on LinkedIn. Now, when I say that, it's not that I'm wanting to necessarily poach that staff, but it's more about putting it out to say, hey, do you know anybody? Do you know anybody that's looking? We are hiring. I know that you're working at X company and that's great, but you might know of some people. And remember, salespeople are often trying to learn. They have their own little networks, own groups that they're part of, learning from each other. And often they might help out. And what's great that I've seen often is me just having that type of interaction versus trying to like get them onto an interview, is that down the line, whether it's 3, 6, 9, 12 months down the line, they'll come back to me and go, hey, I'm actually looking at moving. How about let's having a chat? So that often I've seen that happen a couple of times. And then briefly on the sort of the junior versus experienced hires, like for us, it's more about, it depends on the amount of time I have at that time when hiring, whether we go with junior or experience. So if I have a lot of time to train, to do a lot of the, courses and make sure and mentor them and all of that, happy to then take on the juniors and train them up. But if I need someone to hit the ground running fast, I don't have a lot of time to spend with them. We need some big impact going quick, move quickly. Then I'm going to hire the experience, pay the money, and sort of cross my fingers and hope that we've done a good job of hiring the right person at that time to get going. And then, once things settle down, hopefully there's some space there for mentorship in that. So yeah, that's how I've done that.
Great, thank you. That's some very interesting perspectives. So from looking at graduate talent, looking at development, looking at where to find some sales talent, I think very interesting. Thank you very much. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to combine two questions. So this will be for Jaintheran. So this is a combination of a question that was asked before, as well as a combination from somebody from the audience that's asked now. So Jaintheran, the question that came is, how do you assess whether a candidate's skills and attributes align with the requirements of your sales role? And, at the same time, there's a question that's come through that says on the topic of architects, will a true sales champion not identify with all 4 sales personalities? If you could please give us some perspective on that.
Okay, so maybe let's start off with a question about, a true sales champion and the archetypes. So if you recall, we did say that, there needs to be some sort of general innate sales potential. And that innate potential can translate to being able to identify with any archetype. But what we find very often is that the individual probably has a natural predisposition for one archetype more so than over other archetypes. So we're not saying that a hunter, for example, can never be a challenger, can never be a consultant. They probably can step into that role because they are driven and for that thirst for sales. However, their natural predisposition, which is likely to come to the fore, is going to be that of a hunter. So I hope that answers that part of the question. And then your next question was about, in terms of identifying the right sales fit for your role. I think a very important first step is to make sure that the role is properly defined and that you have a definition and description that is up to date. And it's a little bit like if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. So we need to know exactly what it is we're looking for, what the requirements are in the first place. And then we can then measure the individual and we can align the individual's profile to the role requirements. So fortunately, the science of measuring human behavior makes this quite easy. We're able to quantify things like, your predispositions, your traits, your drivers, etc. And we're able to then say how well it fits the benchmark of a particular role as you have identified it.
Great. Thank you very much, Jaintheran. Okay. The next question I've got, I think I'm going to ask to Jason. So the question is, what, in your experience, differentiates great salespeople from average?
Great question. So from what I've seen is without a doubt, salespeople that are sales staff that are coachable. So I think that differentiates them a little bit from being, great from average. But one that I've really seen is the ones that love numbers. And they love to analyze their own results. So I can only remember 1 or 2 people who've had where they've taken their own data that they've made from calls and emails and all of that and analyzed, the length of calls and the success rates. And then they would pull out insights themselves to try and improve their own hit rate. And so seeing that was something that I could definitely realize that they're trying to improve themselves, not just waiting for a sales manager or me to come there and say, well, why isn't this working? What do you think's going on here? Another one is just having natural empathy for the customer. So you don't see sales as, you obviously get, sleazy salespeople, I was trying to say car salesmen potentially. They'll take your last buck off your back trying to sell a car to you because they got targets to hit. but salespeople that see sales not as sales, but as helping, right? So they're actually looking at you going, can I help you? And if I can't help you, I'm not going to sell this thing to you, right? So they actually, you know, there's potential sale there, and often you can close those clients, but it's a terrible client for your business. And so I'll often I'll often rather say no to a potential client because it's just not a right fit. And I've had some that I've batted for a couple of times. They keep coming back. And eventually when I said to them, this is now we're right. Your business is at the right stage. Well, this is what we can help you with. Then we take them on. And that honesty, I think, has helped a lot from seeing the difference between like just average and great. And I guess lastly, just that drive to succeed, right? Like salespeople are like driven by, sometimes a little bit cooked, you know, they're just driven by sales and driven by numbers and driven by money. That's what makes them tick, right? And leaning into that and just being able to see that within them. Obviously needing to like, you know, massage it a little bit from you know, whether they're just trying to take on any old sale, but those are the things I've seen, sort of the difference between sort of great to average.
If I can jump in there, it's very interesting what Jason is saying, because essentially what Jason is saying is that the great salespeople are the ones that have a level of self-awareness. Because, you know, analyzing your performance and wanting to grow and improve, that is actually one of the ways that we actually define self-awareness, and self-awareness being one of the aspects of learning agility. So very interesting for me that you're actually saying that that particular aspect of agility is what actually determines great salespeople.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm seeing everyone smiling and nodding to this response. So thank you for chipping in as well. That's really great. Okay, excellent. I'm going to put the next question that's come up in the chat to Samara. So one of the attendees is they are debating the onboarding of salespeople in their organization in the first 90 days to ensure that they understand how to sell the solutions that are provided to customers. However, some say this is too long. Could I get your thoughts on this, given sales targets are usually set ahead of a financial year?
Sure, that was a lot. Can you repeat the summary again for me?
Yeah, so the question is about onboarding. So this individual has a 90-day onboarding period in order to understand how to sell the solutions they provide to customers. And there's some thoughts that this might be too long. So based on your process, I think it would be interesting for your reflections on that.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. It's so dependent on what your organization does and what the complexity is of the product or the solution that you're selling. Like for us, we've got an incredibly complex organization, and it takes 3 to 6 months for anybody to truly understand the vastness of what we do. So it's very much like industry and company specific. For us, for our sales guys, I mean, when we put them into an incubator, they've already had starter positions where they understand the organization. They've typically worked in our organization in sort of like a warm-up sales role for at least 6 months. They understand our customer base. They understand what we deliver as an organization, not to a depth that they can actually sell the product. And then we put them into the incubator for 3 months. So there's our 90-day period where we really start to hone their skills. And I guess it's a bit unique for us because we are hiring graduates and we're working with a group of consumers who are high stressed, and we're predominantly doing it over the phone. But for us, 90 days is kind of the norm.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just sort of thinking from our perspective in Lumenii as well, what we see and what we do in our organization, and those sorts of timeframes from a few months to a large set of months, seem to be what we see as well. It does take time for people to find their feet and get the momentum that they need. So I very much see what you're saying, Samara.
I mean, it is really dependent, because if you're selling hamburgers in a fast food chain, you can do it with a day's training. So it very much depends.
Great, thank you. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this next question to Jaintheran, and and Samara. Let's go in that order. So there's been a question here. Can you share some examples of successful sales training programs or initiatives that have significantly improved sales team performance? Jaintheran, do you want to take that first?
Yeah, maybe I can answer that reflecting on once again, our own internal sales team and our sales efforts. I think for us, because of the nature of our organization, the training focuses largely on the product. So there's extensive product training and technical training that has to be done before the individual can actually be operational as a salesperson. So the training for us is both technical in nature, but then it's also focused on what the person's relative strengths and limitations are for the role. So we know what the requirements are for our role. We know how the person matches up to the requirements for our role. So in the training and in the onboarding, we also focus on how to leverage of your strengths that are existing for this role and how to be aware of your potential limitations and potential development areas and how to cope with those in terms of performance. We also spend a lot of time actually trying to develop individuals, and that's an ongoing process. It's obviously not going to get done in the 90-day onboarding period, but in terms of ongoing performance management, in ongoing career management, we do engage in that type of development as well. So in short, the most successful training has been one that are tailored to the organization and the individual, and is also adaptive in the sense that we are constantly checking in on what the person's performance is and how we need to adapt the program going forward.
Yeah, I mean, for us, our training starts with day one. I mean, again, it's quite unique. We've got these graduates coming in. They need exposure in the business. They've got to get the context. And as I've mentioned in some of the other discussions, we've got these incubators that as they shift through the organization, they really get deeply entrenched in the skill sets that they need to perform. To support that, I mean, we look at it from a performance-based perspective. So we say, you know, are you a new entrant, a new joiner into this area of the business? Are you reasonably proficient? Are you doing okay? Or are you one of the guys that are shooting the lights out? And then we structure sort of our training and development initiatives according to that. The mentorship and coaching, I think across all levels is pretty key. People have to have support, and then self-reflection. I mean, for us, like our sales team, our core sales team is over 100 people. It's quite a significant base. They're predominantly phone-based. And so being able to reflect on how is my voice performing? My voice is my sales tool. And if I'm not reflecting, if I'm not listening to that, if I'm not continually trying to perfect that, what's my tone? Can people hear me connecting with them? Can they see, you know, without a camera being on, can they see that I'm smiling? Can they see? And that's where the empathy really comes in. So they have to do a lot of self-reflection. And then I think, you know, retouching on sales fundamentals. Are you practicing the basic tools of selling, of closing the deal? Are you reflecting on those? And when it comes to training, I think, you know, adults retain somewhere between 10 and 30% of what they learn in a classroom, but they retain up to 90% of what they do. And so if your leadership isn't structured to actually support your ongoing learning and development initiatives, if they're not part of that and they're not actively practicing it through regular feedback and engagement, through one-on-ones that happen consistently, month on month in, then that entire learning and development initiative to support all of your development falls flat. And then something that we've done recently, which I think has been pretty successful, is starting to look at performance enhancement. So it's great that you focus on the new guys coming in as you're growing your sales team. It's good that you focus on the low performers, but you're not always going to get the best return on investment there. Where we're starting to see real return on investment is if you can, through data and really good insights, understand what is it that makes the top guys the top guys. And you can somehow isolate that and get them to teach it to the next level. It's pure gold.
Yeah, thank you. That's very, very insightful. I think it makes all the sense in the world to understand what works and to model that in the organization. I'm actually going to, this question that's come through in the chat that I think is so interesting, and I'd like to put it to the whole panel. I'm going to kind of combine it with a question that was asked before. But the question is, how has sales competence shifted since the pandemic and the introduction of AI? And the second question that goes along with that is, how important is agility in increasing sales performance? So the question is about how AI has, how the pandemic and AI have shifted sales competence, and to reflect on the role of agility. Jason, do you want to take a first stab? You're on mute, Jason.
I was that guy, yeah. So from the AI perspective, I think some of the tools that now, so a couple of things, obviously, you're able to sit in so many more sales conversations now if they're obviously virtual, right? Instead of having to travel and all of that. So I think that's like one thing. It's quite a basic thing to note. But from an AI perspective, I think the tools that have come across now that make you being able to analyze sales calls and improve your sales calls, I think that's what's rapidly expanded, and which is a great tool. So you were talking just before this call about Fathom, but I know there's a couple of others like Chorus, and I use Grain, for example, which you are able to record your calls. Now, transcripts and notes from a call are great, but what about if you look at the other data that comes out of that? Who's talking the most, right? What are the tones of voice that are coming through? Like, all of this is what AI can analyze for you and give you scoring. And then if you've got a whole sales team to see, you mentioned it, Samara, what are the top salespeople doing? Analyze their calls and reflect them onto the other people. And that's what AI can do without you having to sit hours after hours as a sales manager to listen to every single call, and then figure that out. So that, for me, is the biggest part that we've been able to use AI. And I think if you're not using those tools now, there's no reason why you shouldn't be, to improve your sales performance.
Yeah, I think the topic of AI is so vast. I mean, from your own personal assistant through to looking at the trends, what does the data say? So we use it quite extensively, and in two ways. One is we also do analysis of, the entire sales journey. Where are the drop-off points? Where are we losing our customers in the conversation? So we use consultants for that, to look at the data and to kind of help us to say where are the low-hanging fruit and the performance performance improvement areas of the process. And then we use it to actually support the sales process itself. So how do we bring in data and insights about the customer, about their situation, to help the sales call? And I think if you look at, AI is such a hot topic at the moment, but if you look at what's left, you've got transactional interactions, and then you've got these human interactions where you're building trust, you're building an experience, you're expressing what your brand is about, what your company is about. And that's what's left. It's the humaning part that's left. It's about dealing with the emotions. It's about holding somebody. It's about creating that space of empathy, creating the trust, because you're competent, you're knowledgeable, and you actually care. You're not just another salesperson trying to hit another number. You care about helping the individual. And that's the core of what's left when you bring all of the AI tools in to take care of the transactional interactions that you have in a sales process.
Right, thank you. Thank you. Do you want to reflect a little bit on agility, the agility part of the question for us?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think Samara and Jason have covered it really nicely. But it's also really interesting that the question also talks about agility and the role that agility plays. And we know that the research tells us very, very clearly that there's a strong positive correlation between learning agility and performance. And so we also know that the pandemic just fast-forwarded what was going to happen anyway. AI was inevitable, even though we had warnings about AI from various prominent figures, but it's inevitable, and we're going to have to deal with it anyway. And that's where agility steps in. Somebody with high agility is able to cope with whatever gets thrown at them. Agility is about the future. It's about being able to perform and demonstrate effective behaviors even when you don't know what to do. But having AI at your disposal, I think, just makes that easier, provided that you are actually open to engaging with AI. But I think I'd also just like to emphasize what Samara says. It can only take us so far, because we have to remember that sales is also client-focused, and there will be clients that still prefer to deal with the individual rather than dealing with AI, because now we can get onto a website and we can look at samples, we can order a demonstration, etc., without actually seeing anyone. But there might still be people that want to actually engage with someone, and we're not completely replacing the individual with AI.
Sure, it's amazing how fast the time goes. I see we've only got a few minutes left. There's actually been quite a few questions on retention that have come through. So let's see if we can get a few more questions in. Jason, could you reflect on what measures startups can put in place to manage talent retention in sales?
Yeah, sure. I think there's 3 or 4 things here that work quite well. Career development is one. I think it's quite a standard one to realize people love to know that they're learning and growing. Quite a straightforward one, and exposing them to new areas. So I know there's we always love a good Gen Z question, and that's one of them, where to sort of tie that into that is like exposing people to new areas of whether it's your business, but feel like they're learning and growing. Good quality leadership. I think we all know that old saying of you don't leave a job, but you leave a bad manager. I mean, it's just so true. And so making sure, whether it's the leadership right at the top and trusting and believing that they know what they're doing when it comes to businesses, and not everybody knows what they're doing, and being competent. I mean, just having competent managers and competent leaders. We laugh, I see everyone nod their head, but it's just so true. Compensation obviously is one of them, which I think we know when it comes to salespeople. And I think lastly, having some form of flexibility. So whether it's remote, hybrid, flexi hours, all of those things, just having some form of flexibility, especially in the way we can do work these days. So those are some of the things that I look at, especially from us, growing a startup, is what's worked for us.
Yeah, I wish we had more time to tackle this topic. It's a vast topic. I've actually got quite a bit to say on it, but I'm going to try and summarize. So the growth opportunity is absolutely critical. People have to see how they're growing, and more importantly, they want to see how they are earning better. So, we try to gamify things, and the better you perform, the more opportunity you get. So I think structuring, especially with a large team, the guys who really perform, don't squander our leads. Those are great resources. We pay for them. You squander them, we give you less. So gamifying that system and continuously updating how we do it. So they know the commission models change every 3 to 6 months. They anticipate this. They know that. It's got to align with the company purpose, the company strategy. And we need to be able to deliver on that. And then I think, particularly because we're hiring the younger generation, these guys want to be involved. They want to know that they're making a difference in 2 ways. One, I'm contributing to my job. I'm contributing to how the organization is doing things. And then secondly, they actually want to see their impact. So how am I changing people's lives? And I think for us, we are so focused on our culture, our values, and our purpose. And our purpose is to help people. It's not to just make numbers and deliver profit for the shareholders. We exist to do good in the world. And I think particularly the Gen Z, they want to connect to a solid purpose where, yes, they're doing well, but they're also doing good. And they can see and feel the impact. And then I think lastly, reward and recognition, or maybe the second last point, reward and recognition is critical. And not just, well done, thank you, there's money in your bank account, but showing off your impact, actually showing it to the world. This is what you've done. Thank you very much. Those words, thank you, go so far. And then I think that last point has now escaped me, but yeah, it's gone. I think I'm weary of the time.
No, I think thank you, Samara. Thank you for that. I think we are almost at the end of our time slot. What I'd like to do is I'd like to just give everyone the opportunity. If you've got one piece of advice, a one sentence piece of advice from your experience that you could share with the audience about sales, what would it be? Jason, do you want to take it first?
Sure. Yeah. Me, it's effort doesn't always equal success, and to be mindful of that. So you could be making thousands of cold calls, but it just might not be timing. So being mindful of the amount of effort being mindful of that. Effort doesn't always equal success.
Thank you, Jason. Samara?
I think for me, it's not to pigeonhole salespeople as superficial and they're just driving for the money. I think, it was a conversation earlier in the webinar, but people actually want to do good. So to my previous point, they want to work for a purpose and they want to be driven and do well.
Thank you, Samara. Jaintheran, quick one from you.
I would say the most important thing is to listen. Listen to what your client is saying. Listen to what the experts are saying. Listen to the salesperson and listen to the assessments. Listen to what the assessment results are saying.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to the panelists. We've run out of time. It's been really insightful. Thank you so much for your time and energy in answering these questions. We certainly didn't get to all of them. We will be answering all the questions. Also, what we've done is we've popped up on the screen our next event, which is Effective Interviewing Masterclass. So if you are interested in joining our masterclass, please take a look on our website and download some more information. And then lastly, as we close this webinar down, which we're going to do in the next few seconds, Zoom will pop up a small little 1-minute survey. We'd love your feedback. We'd love to hear what you have to say. And we'd also love to hear your thoughts as to what the next webinar topic could be. But thank you very much, Jason. Thank you, Samara. Thank you, Jaintheran. Thanks to the organizers that have organized this webinar from the Lumenii team. And thank you for all the attendees. We really appreciate your time and all the questions. Thank you, everyone.